Hi everyone, Richard Carlton here. Welcome to our FileMaker 17 webinar. This is a very successful event. We had many hundreds of people at the event, and we went through a lot of critical features that are part of the 17 release, including the features that I feel, that my team feels, are the most important components of the 17 release. Now, broadcasting this webinar was easy for us because we've just been busy finishing our FileMaker 17 video training courses, etc. And feel free to either buy the individual course, or if you want our complete training bundle, which includes a full copy of FileMaker Pro Advanced 17 and FM Starting Point Enhanced, which has all the bells and whistles in it, plus all the video training. So let's go ahead and dive into this material. The FileMaker platform, strategically from a big picture perspective from 16 to 17, there's some huge improvements in it. But in terms of the products and market, really, there's still FileMaker Server. Then we have, of course, our clients. FileMaker Server is the software that runs on Mac and Windows that would be in your office. The other scenario that you see a lot of is people using FileMaker Cloud. FileMaker Cloud is actually a separate service or piece of software, if you will. It's really software and a service. And that runs only in the cloud, not on Mac or Windows. So that's a separate offering that, frankly, the price is the same. It doesn't change anything in terms of what your costs are, but it allows you to set up a server without you actually having to build the server yourself, which is kind of cool. So once again, the clients are FileMaker Pro, Mac, and Windows. You can see that on the graphic here, as well as Go is on the iPhone, iPad, and WebDirect, which is your browser-based client. WebDirect was largely created to check off the Android checkbox, right? Once again, FileMaker is Apple, and Apple don't like Android. So it's real simple math there. People, that's why this is a non-marketing approved webinar, because I'm going to tell you the straight truth on this stuff, and I'm not going to candy coat any of it. Yeah, so the FileMaker Pro 17 Advanced is the standard client now. This is FileMaker. There's some interesting things going on. FileMaker is simplifying their licensing. They're simplifying their platform. And Pro Advanced is really the standard client now. So Pro, there was Pro and Pro Advanced before. Now everyone gets Pro Advanced, which is great because in all our bundles and all our training now, we're giving you Pro Advanced. Now, FileMaker has also adjusted the licensing costs a little bit. They've moved around. Some people have seen 1 or 2% price increase. Some people have seen like a 40% price increase. So the question is, why do you care about this? And this is really the issue that we've divided the conversation up into. And really, a business owner, some of you out there are business owners, that you really don't care so much about FileMaker, only that it is efficient for your team. You invest $1 into FileMaker and you get back $4 or $5 or $10 in efficiency improvements. That's a big deal. We have brand new developers that are out there. This is this group of people who haven't used FileMaker for very long, or maybe you've used it for a long time, but you never did much with it, so you don't know a lot about it, and you're trying to maybe interested in learning. Then we have an intermediate developer classification that we call this. This is the people that are been using FileMaker. They're kind of growing up to be more serious developers, and long term they will probably become a senior developer. And my art team had fun with this. They call them a senior ninja. But you know, our Jedi Knight Master Ninja people are the senior people in the FileMaker community, and they are typically certified, and they have all sorts of advanced skill sets. You know, SQL, related ODBC, JSON, PHP, all the advanced, deep into the pool stuff. Really, this is a continuum of all these different users here, and so I want to address the relevancy of FileMaker 17 to each of these groups, which would be great. So first off, we have the business owners, and these are the people who just want value, and frankly, at the end of the day, they don't particularly care. A lot of them don't care how they got there, but they like FileMaker because FileMaker is Apple. It's backstopped by one of the largest tech companies in the world. It has a history of doing a great job and being reliable. And frankly, the investments you get into it, it's easy to get the ROI back out of it. So the features that are part of the REST consumption, the data API stuff, that was really a 16 piece, but you're really starting to see it now after about a year. This is where we're connecting to PayPal. We're easily connecting to all these different services. There's some really neat integrations where FileMaker can consume data from outside. So this is the idea of FileMaker consuming the data in, and that'll be important because you'll hear about this API thing, but really it's kind of which way the data is going. So for the most part, that's the consumption API. People who use the data API or the REST API they can automate processes and save a lot of time. The next item is super important, and this is the business owner cares about this. There's no migration, no conversion to go to 17. So the FMP 12 file format is still there. FileMaker, and this is a very important part, FileMaker, once again, is simplifying their licensing, right? And that's this third bullet here. And the issue with this is that basically they want to simplify the product line, and basically FileMaker is not going to sell individual products. Like, oh, I want a server and I want these 5 things and I want 12 copies of Pro. They're not selling it that way anymore. All you do is you tell them the number of users you have and you pay that. That's all you have to do. And then that group of people has access to all the products. All of the products. It's really cool. So I have 5 people. Well, what if one of them wants to use Go, one of them wants to use WebDirect, and 3 of them want to use Pro? Doesn't matter. FileMaker actually doesn't even care, really. All they want you to do is say 5 people, X number of dollars, and they give you all the software. So it makes the sales process much simpler. It's been an issue for a long time. FileMaker is striving to improve that. So instead of having 2 copies of FileMaker Pro out there, we really have 1 copy, which simplifies things. Now, the bottom item is important to understand. FileMaker 14 is basically coming to end of life, where FileMaker won't even provide tech support for it in September. And so if you have a 17 client or server and you have 14 client or server, they don't talk. So even though it's the FMP 12 file format, they will not talk to each other. So 15, 16, and 17 can talk to each other, or 14, 15, 16 can talk to each other. But as soon as you get to that 17, it doesn't connect. Now, the exception to that rule, and I want to point that out real quick, is if you're using FileMaker Cloud, whatever version of FileMaker Cloud you're using, if it's 15, 16, or 17, the minimum client for that cloud install is whatever that version is. So if you buy 17 Cloud right now, then you cannot go connect to it with 15 or 16 Pro. FileMaker would want you to connect with the 17 Pro or the 17 Go. Does that make sense? Of course, if you have an older cloud like 16 Cloud or 15 Cloud, and a lot of you have that, I know you're here. I've talked to you, right? You could install Pro 17 and connect to your 15 or 16 Cloud. It's not a problem. So clients in the future are fine to a point. Clients backwards, FileMaker doesn't like that so much. So in terms of the next group of people that are interested in this product, this is our junior developer level. Most of you are these 2 middle groups, and you're trying to learn. Maybe you want to become certified, or maybe you're just trying to learn what you need to know to help your business or help your boss, or maybe you're a mid-level consultant helping someone. So once again, this is the data API, the consumption. We kind of covered that. We're going to cover some improvements to FileMaker in terms of the way their layouts work. It used to be that you'd go into layout mode and you would have these panes that would float around everywhere, and now they're attached. It's really kind of cool, and so we'll demonstrate that. There's a new way of doing a portal that makes things much simpler, much easier. FileMaker's added a capability called add-on tables. It's kind of the idea where you just drag and drop something that you want, and FileMaker wires it all up for you behind the scenes. It actually builds the relationship for you. It puts the table in, it puts the fields in, it connects everything. Kind of cool. It's a little bit of what I would call experimental technology that's in the product, but it's in there, and it's kind of a sign of things to come. It's very cool. And then, of course, these people love the fact that they get Pro Advanced. A lot of times the beginning users never had Pro Advanced, they didn't want to spend the money on it. Now they get access to it. Very cool. And then, of course, they've added the ability to send emails with multiple attachments if you're using the built-in send email command out of FileMaker. So multiple email attachments. A couple of these features in here are kind of like long-standing features that FileMaker's addressed. Multiple email attachment seems like an obvious thing, but they just have now added that. So it's kind of one of those things where some of these are really, some of the features are really forward-facing, and some of them are kind of catch-up features. So the next group, intermediate developers. These are people who are not certified, but they've been doing FileMaker seriously for probably a number of years, 2 or 3 years, or maybe longer than that. There is a new tool in the FileMaker platform, and we're going to cover it. It's called the data migration tool. And this tool allows you to basically take all the data out of an old file and do a couple drag and drop items, and it moves all the data to a new version of the file. So if a customer has an old file, right, and they're using it on their server, you shut it down, download the file, and then say you've been working on a new version of the file for them, right, offline, a couple commands, and FileMaker will move all the data for you. automatically. It lines everything up. There's no import from one end to the other. This feature is the biggest feature of the release. Now, that's my perspective, but in terms of me seeing the historical importance of things, of all the things in the product, the data migration tool in 17 is the big piece. And frankly, should have been there a long time ago, but FileMaker has now decided that this is a strategically important area for them to be, to allow you to build solutions, not just build awesome solutions, but to be able to upgrade them easily. It's really a big deal. In fact, I'm still blown away by it. Every time I run it, we're going to do it live, and it'll blow you away. Consumption of data. Once again, this is the same thing back in the last one, that these people are doing a lot of wiring in, of bringing in outside services, consuming outside data into FileMaker. And then we have the ability to ungroup objects. We're going to demo these things for you. Now, the Senior Ninja people, we're going to do some of this today, but I'm not going to get into all of it. If you have questions, I have very senior people here in the conversation. I'm assuming Steve Allen's here, some of the other folks are in here. And all this is covered in the video. So the reason I'm able to do this webinar like right at ship is because we've been getting all the videos done, and they're all done. The FileMaker 17 video course, it's like 55, almost 60 hours. It's done. And so mobility. We are going to play some with this today, a little bit on iPhone and iPad. Basically, it's we're going to play with the configure local notification function. FileMaker basically has the ability to execute effectively a timed notification that will pop up in the user's face, and then you could do some cool things with that. That's very huge. There's also some additional sensor support, like all these sensors that they have in the mobile devices, where you change it, the angle, or you flip it, or you do things with it, or the heading of it as it's moving in the car, like like a magnetic compass heading, or it can even actually count the number of steps. If you're like a Fitbit kind of thing, it actually could count the steps that that your iPad or your iPhone is going through. So that's all neat sensor data that's in there. Autocomplete's in there now, works pretty well. Autocomplete is the ability where you're just typing in a field and it autocompletes based upon previous content that's in there. So once again, that's the FileMaker 17 launch. Some of you are here because you want to know about the new starting point. The new starting point is version 6.0. If you go to fmstartingpoint.com, and then you can hit the download button, and we'll email you the link, and you get the link for the current version plus all the legacy versions for older versions of FileMaker. And so we take advantage of the latest things with FM Starting Point. And once again, the idea with Starting Point is pre-built, it's CRM, it's unlocked. A number of very senior consultancies who will not be named in this webinar actually use this tool with their customers, largely because it's free, it's open source. We had questions from people who wanted to know if FileMaker could scale and go to hundreds of users. And so part of Starting Point, it's designed to scale. It's built very efficiently. If you're a brand new FileMaker user, then you're gonna be excited to get anything to work, but the things you might do as a beginning brand new person might not be things that work well with 100 users, right? What performs well for 5 or 10 people or 30 people may not perform well for 100 people across the internet. So we spend a lot of time in our training talking about that. However, Starting Point itself fundamentally is built that way. It's really a big deal. Obviously, we got the calendar and PayPal integration, and we're going to talk about that and a little bit, and then show the 16 related stuff. So I'm going to dive into the demo here, Miles. You're going to unmute yourself. You can dive in and help drive around so I can make sure that we get all the demo-y stuff done. This is the iPhone demo. I'm going to save that just for a little bit. I'm going to put that over here. So first things first is a new copy of Starting Point. So is this it right here? This is the 601. So this is the new version here that we have. I'm going to go ahead and close that, and I'm going to leave this over here for now. You guys can see the whole screen here. First, I'm just going to go to contact screen here. And the first thing I want to do is talk about this concept of the attached panels. And the attached panels, I was asking the engineers or some of our customers the other day, actually the last couple of days, about what they thought about this. So if we go into layout mode, and I use keyboard shortcuts a lot, so you'll have to forgive me on this. So layout mode is here. After I showed this to you, browse mode, find mode, layout mode, I'm going to use the shortcuts for this, right? It has panels or panes that attach left and right side. And someone said, oh, those are like water wings. I go, what? They're water wings. And so if you've ever learned to swim, or you have children that learn to swim, sometimes they'll put these inflatable things that are attached to the sides, right? And it keeps your kid from, floating right in the pool or wherever they're at. And so what's cool about this is as you go back from browse mode to layout mode, they pop out like a little, almost like a little popping balloon that pops out. We can do stuff. And then when you go back to browse mode, they go away. So they inflate and they deflate. So as you're building your layout in FileMaker, you want to have a little bit of space left and right so you can see these things pop out. All the tools that are here are the tools that have been there, but a number of users always get confused that they were separate windows before, and they would get lost and buried and they'd go other places. And so it was a real mess, right? So users calling, hey, where's the pane? Where's this information? I can't find the inspector, right? The inspector. So what was an inspector window before is now this inspector pane, the right side. The left side is the objects. You can actually access your fields here. This was the field picker in the old days. This is so much better, so much cooler. It's got the search built in right here. If I'm looking for like an ID field, I can type that. I mean, this radically improves the overall usability of layout mode. So that's the first thing. FileMaker effectively has a new object on the layout, okay? They don't really call it a different object. They call it a portal, and we've always had portals. But what it is, a portal with a additional option on it. And what this is, if I double click the portal over here, if I can bring it up, in the previous days that we had, in business starting points, we have all these pre-built things in here, but these were the options you had before. The option at the top is now to reattach it automatically to the current table. And when you do this, it actually sets up a special situation where if I go back to browse mode, as I flip over here and I select things, right, so this side of it over here, the data entry is keeping automatically synced. When you drag and drop it on here, you don't have to define a button. You don't have to keep it synchronized. If I do a search if I do a find mode, I go to find mode, Command F, and I do a search for RI, and I get a found set. The found set's here, it's 4, but it also automatically syncs with the portal. Now, this would seem like an obvious thing, but it's not been there before. And I actually had an engineer who sat down and we built this, and then we had to keep rebuilding it until we could get the performance to be really great. So this is like 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. He spent a week working on this. As a very senior engineer. A brand new FileMaker developer person with 3 months of experience can drag and drop this on the screen literally in 60 seconds. It's automatic. So this button function here, the blue highlighting is me turning that on. But outside of the blue highlighting, you could put anything in here you want. Like if you want to put the company name over here, we could do that. We come over here. Well, it is over there, right? So, or you could put other information here, or their email, for example, or phone. If I want to change this to, say, email, is it contact email? There it is, email. Yeah, so you can change and update it, and you can do whatever you want. You can even put their picture. If you want all their pictures in here, you can do all that. So this is a super big time saving. Some of the senior FileMaker people in the community are like, oh, well, it's no big deal. Listen, this is a big deal because this brings to you at a very basic level some very advanced functionality that's completely automatic. Very cool. So that's called what they call that the master detail portal. And really in layout mode, it looks and acts like a portal, but it's got, there's a button on it, obviously, and a normal portal that's not there. So really it's kind of a different object. That makes sense.
What happened to FileMaker Pro, and how do I, why does it say advanced, but I'm not seeing features?
Really, FileMaker has one client, and you have a mode of turning on the pro, having a kind of a pro mode where it doesn't show you all the developer tools, and then you have kind of the pro advanced mode, right, which shows all the advanced tools. That's what I have turned on right here. If I go to actually preferences right here, and then I come down here at the bottom, I can say use advanced tools, and I can turn that on or off. If I say okay, I hit okay. Actually, I don't want to quit right now because I have I'm hosting a file from my iPad, but if you quit and restart, then this menu goes away. So when you first install FileMaker Pro Advanced, it won't be on. You have to actually come here and turn this on. You turn it on, and then you quit FileMaker, reopen it, and then all the extra bells and whistles come on.
Another one I think you mentioned you wanted to show was the ungrouping grouped objects.
So forget starting point for a second here. Very basic FileMaker file. We were getting this wired up And what we're trying to do is make sure that as you dragged it around, notice how it kind of centers itself, right? So it's doing that. You can see that it's trying to, screen's chunking a little bit, but you get the idea. And so this group stays centered, but it's really separate objects. So if I go to layout mode, I click on this, that's a grouped object, so I can move it around, right? But if I want to edit items inside of it, like change their settings and things, you historically had to ungroup the item first. You had to go to up here and you had to arrange, you had to ungroup it, do a bunch of stuff, then go back and group it. It's a giant pain in the rear end. So what you can do is you click on it, and then you click it again. So that's a new thing. So you click, and then I click again. And now, if you look over here in the water wings, the bullet, they've inflated, right, on the left and right side, are panels, or panes, correction. This is the group here, right? And I can hide the group or show the group. But then I can actually select the item here, which is what I had, or this one here. And what I can do is I can go in here and I could change the font color, say, for example, say I wanted to make it red or something, okay? And then when I go back to browse mode, it's still a group. It's still one group. So I haven't moved this. So if I grab it and move it around, you can even resize it in this mode. You can actually grab this item and say, no, I want it to be a little bigger. I want to go here. What if I want to grow outside the group, right? The group automatically expands to handle that, right? So yeah, very cool. That's the grouping functionality. That right there is a huge time saver. If you do much work building layouts, very big deal.
Next things we had is some of the new features in FM Starting Point, and maybe showing off the calendar a bit.
Yeah, let's just cover that real quick. So this is FM Starting Point. The biggest notice that you'll notice between the 6.0 and the last one, which is 5.1, whatever version, 5.1.2 or whatever the version is, that's for 16, is this site, we turned on these side master detail views here. So if we go over here, like invoices is kind of handy. We only have one invoice here, but you could customize this and have it show additional information, right? Very cool. The biggest thing in Starting Point is really the calendar. People love this stuff. So if I go to calendar here, this is the new calendar. This is actually not our calendar. This is an open source calendar, which means it's basically more or less free. We bolted it into the free version of Starting Point. And so what's cool about this is that actually it's fully dynamic. And you can drag stuff. Say like Art has this cat and he was helping us last night and his cat was in his lap, you know, purring. But say we want to wash the cat, we want to move it to tomorrow because Art needs help. He needs to put on all sorts of gloves and things to protect himself, because if you haven't ever washed a cat, it's a show. It's quite, most cats don't want to be washed, so it's a tough one. So anyway, the calendar here is very cool. I can click on it. It talks to FileMaker, pops up. I can change it, Art's cat, and then I can make a note saying, if I want to make a note, I can say, how about padding? So I say continue, and of course it updates it here. I can move it around. I can even change the amount of time it takes. Like, well, the cat might really put up a fight, so we're going to need extra time here, like 3 extra hours, right? So you do that. The little flash is it updating FileMaker, because this is a web viewer, so like a browser, and then it's talking back and forth to FileMaker in real time. Very cool. You can have different categories, colors, user. This is really cool. And so this is free if you download the new Starting Point from startingpoint.com. So in the enhanced, what we call the enhanced version, we have the hooks into PayPal. And so the short version is, it's not really, you can go into layout mode here. And what we do is we go into invoices, go to layout mode. I can scroll over here, the water wings deploy. By the way, if you don't want the water wings on, you have the little water wing undeployer here, so that they can be hidden, right? Hide or show the panes, left or right panes, right? You can go over here to the PayPal section and grab the PayPal button here and drag it on your layout somewhere, like here or up here. I guess I could do it up there. And then so we basically give you these features on the side of the product. We call them side nuggets. And so they're not on by default, but you can drag them on the side of the layout and bring them on, and then they activate, right? And so when you click this, it brings up a PayPal integration, and it's done. The interface design is really slick here. So part of this is that you have to put your own PayPal account in. And then once you do that, then what you can do is build an invoice with FileMaker, press a button, it sends it out. So this is very, very popular. So this is in the enhanced version. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because a lot of you just want the basic one, which is free. But this is another one of those REST API deals. Remember, we kept talking about consuming, the consumption of REST. That was really a 16 thing, but it's really, for FileMaker 16, that was the strategically huge thing, was easy consumption of REST data into FileMaker Pro or Go. It's a consumption, and that was the big thing in 16. The big thing in 17, and we of course haven't got to it yet, we're 34 minutes into the webinar, is the data migration tools. How about we spend some time on that? Miles, you ready for that?
Let's do it.
This up here is a copy of starting point right here. If I double click it and fire it up, so it's got 127,000 records, there's images and a bunch of stuff. I'm going to close it off. We'll just take a look at the size of the file here real quick. 714 megabytes. A 1 gigabyte database these days is not uncommon at all. A lot of you have databases that are smaller or larger than this. So let's say that you've been using a copy of starting point, and so then someone took the copy of starting point, we added features to it, and you want to use those new features. Well, how do you move the data from one point A to point B? Well, it used to be you had to go into each table and import the data over, then reset the serial number. Some of you have no idea what I'm talking about. Some of you know what I'm talking about. You're going, oh yeah, that was horrible, right? Watch this, this is cool. So here's the data migration tool. So FileMaker made a tool, and it's a command line tool. And some of you are Apple people, Mac people, and you're going, oh my God, it's a command line tool. And I'm kind of the same way, I really don't like it. This is the tool that FileMaker has. And then there are third-party companies who have made free add-ons to make it simpler, right? Make sense? This is a tool from the folks at Productive Computing, Keith and Mark LaRochelle, and that's too big of a mouthful, so we just say evil twins. It's like 2 syllables, evil twins. These are the guys down at Productive Computing. They made this tool, and so what happens is that you get this tool, you download it for free, you go to the configuration and you point to the data migration tool, so it kind of sucks the data migration tool into it. So this is the engine that FileMaker created. I don't want to do command line, terminal like C/D/, no fun. So what we do is you open this tool up, you suck in the data migration tool in it, that engine that does this, and so then it gives you a graphical interface. So let's migrate the data. Ready for this? It's going to blow your mind. So I'm going to say add. And then all we have to do is come over here and we go, show me the old file. This is a 700 and whatever megabyte file. I drag and drop it, right? Very cool. And it imports it into this container here. And then I'm going to give the access to this. It has to know if it's going to migrate it, what that username and passwords are. If you're using the ear encryption at rest password, you got to put it right there too. And then what you need is a fresh clone. If you open up a FileMaker file and you go up under File down to Save a Copy As, you can do a clone. That's what you have to do. Basically, it's a copy of a file here. I'm going to duplicate this one real quick because once I open it, it's not fresh anymore. So it has to be a fresh clone. So I'm going to say admin 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a clone file that now I've opened it, but there's absolutely no records in it. If you go to File, Manage, Database, if I go to Tables, you'll see that there are 0 records in here. I don't know if you can see all those zeros in the line. Those are all 0. And so it's a clone. Now, the fact that I've opened it, I've tainted it. I can't use that anymore. So to make a new clone, you just simply go File, what am I doing? Save a copy as, right? And then you go to clone, right? Pretty straightforward. And so that makes the clone file, right? So we have that. So that's what that is. So this one I've opened now. This one's tainted. So I'm going to throw this away. And this is what I call a fresh clone. There is some new terminology that we are getting with this. Fresh clone is one of them. There's a clone, which really is an empty file. But once you open it, it's no longer fresh. So it has to be untainted, unopened. And then so we drag and drop that in here. We're going to give it the username and password. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, to line up all the tables and to do this import with 750 megabytes and to line all that stuff up, hours of work, hours plural. And that's if you do it perfectly. If you mess it up, you got to stop and do it all over again, probably. So you got a real mess. So how about we just have it do it for us instead, right? So we just say migrate databases. So it asks for the security code on the machine. So I'm going to do that. So it's starting to migrate now. And so what would take hours literally becomes seconds. And you'll see it, this will take about 3 minutes end to end. It's going to move the whole thing for us into the new version. In fact, it lines the fields up. If you change the name of the fields, it's smart enough to know that. It knows that you changed the name and it still moves the data over for you. Obviously, in the new clone, if you have a brand new table, brand new fields, nothing would go into them because they didn't exist previously. There's nothing to come over, but it moves the date over. If you change the table name, it knows. It's smart enough to figure that out. If you change the field names, it knows. It figures it out. And then it resets all the serial numbers, all in seconds. And when we do it with the command line, it'll even run faster. So if you look down here at our processor, it's kind of hard to see this. I'm going to bring up the CPU usage. So it's using effectively 2 cores, or this machine is a 2 processor i5 that we're watching here. So questions, Miles, while we're waiting for our 3 minutes to elapse here?
Yeah, kind of related to the data migration tool. Someone asked, how do I access it? Like initially, how do I get to that?
If you are an FBA member, and FBA is FileMaker's kind of consulting program, so I'm an FBA member. A lot of consultants will be FBA members. They get it for free. If you're not an FBA member, you can buy what FileMaker calls their FileMaker FDS, developer subscription, right? And so it's a $99 a year subscription, and in that subscription, you would get it as well. So effectively, if you've never had the developer subscription, then you pay 99 bucks and you're gonna get this. Very cool. The FM Data Migration Assistant is available at productivecomputing.com. If you go to their main page, they should have a link on the front page to take you to this. In fact, they actually have a couple of videos that walk you through this, but it ain't much to this. Yeah, you saw me do it. There's a couple other little small options that you can do. One of the things it does, which is very cool, is it takes the accounts that you've set up in the file that your customers use. Say they've added new staff or removed staff, and everyone has their own account. It moves those over too. So it brings over all the data, and it lines up and migrates it. So very, very, very cool. So, so about 3 minutes on this, and then all I'll do is we'll run one with the command line to show you the difference, right? And so I prefer to do it this way because it's easier for me to keep it straight in my head. It does run a little bit slower when you have this wrapper application, but I mean, we're talking like what would take half a day or a full day of work at least to do this becomes 3 minutes. I mean, this is really a big deal. I mean, hugely a big deal. So,
hey, Richard, Mark from Productive actually just messaged us and said that the latest version now uses all processors.
Really? That's why we call them the evil twins. They only pay attention to you when you go on a TV, and then you trash them. No, I like these guys. They're really good guys. They did a great job. So conveniently, it's done. So where'd it go? It's called, oh, here it is right here. It's called migrated. So they put the name migrated on it for you. I open it up. It's gonna say username, password. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's done. Now, I actually have a different field name change in here, etc., and it did migrate that over for me. It's pretty cool. So let me show you, if you don't use the productive tool, what the command line experience is. So once again, we're using it took a little bit longer because I'm actually also broadcasting from this machine. And so frankly, it's a Mac Mini with a solid state drive and 16 gigs of RAM. This one's an i7 technically, but only with 2 processors, right? So, I mean, we normally never needed anything more than that, but if you had a huge system, like a 50 gigabyte system, you might want to get a Windows box or a Mac Pro with like 12 cores or something. So let me just walk you through this. I'm gonna go ahead and close this. It does a little housekeeping when it closes. I'm gonna open up the data. So this is the tool here. You double click it. It brings up the commands here that you have to deal with. And so what I do is you go over here and you say new window, basic, or just new window right here. And so this is the command prompt for your computer, right? It's the same thing on Windows, the terminal, right? And what you have to do is you have to end up building it out of these little statements here. Do this, do this, do this. And if I had to sit here and do this with you, it would take us 45 minutes, and I don't want to waste time. So what I did is actually, as I start to do this, oh, there it goes. The computer's still, there it goes, closing up. Okay, here we go. Now, I have not tried to do this process and also broadcast a webinar at the same time because it's going to suck every last ounce of horsepower of this machine. So if I suddenly send the dim out here, it's because it's doing the conversion in 90 seconds, not even 3 minutes. So but the command line that you have to put together is this stuff here, right? It's a command. So you have to identify the data migration tool. Then remember that you have to identify the source, where the file's at, where the file's gonna go, all that kind of stuff. So what I'm gonna do is down here, I kept trying it and it kept failing until I got the right block of text. And so literally what I do is I copy this in here And actually, I want to make sure the file names are correct still. So I'm going to go ahead and close that one. The file name is I'm going to get rid of this file. That's the migration. So it's fresh clone, lowercase fresh clone. It's right there. Clone. Okay, this should work. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this over here, or I'm going to leave it down here. It's going to take the data out of here. And this is the productive tool, but we're not using that. And it's going to suck it and stick it in here. And so building this URL, I don't know. So I paste it in there, and I'm going to press return. And the verbose is what it's going to do. It's going to give us a lot of telemetry as it's lining things up and doing things. So you ready? Let's try it. There it goes. So Miles, if I fade out, let me know. But it's sucking 100% available horsepower on everything.
A couple of different people have asked how it's passing this. Is it using a primary ID, or how are they lining up?
Briefly technical here. So for every object in FileMaker, FileMaker has a hidden ID number, okay? We cover this in our video course, right? So if you want, this is actually about an hour-long conversation in our video course. So, but I'll cover as much here. We have time. The way it works is that first, it lines up the name of the table and the fields. When I say this, I'm saying table and field, right? Because it does each one kind of individually. It lines up the name and it finds the ID on the source side, and then it matches it on the destination or the clone side, right? And then it knows to import that data straight across. If the name changes, that's okay, because so it has basically three levels of like missile lock. It's like a fighter jet trying to get missile lock. It has three ways of getting missile lock, right? One is name and ID, which means nothing has changed across. If you change the name, then it figures it out, because it'll still allow a missile lock based upon ID, right? The ID, you don't see the ID. No one sees the ID. You can get into the ID if you get into some deep scripting, you can find the ID, but you can't ever change it. And so what it does, oh, it's done, by the way. So it's all done, it finished. But you can see right here where it does, like this one right here, it's kind of hard to see this. All right, so here's what it's doing. It says matches, it has missile lock based upon the name and the ID, right? So the way it works is there's three missile locks and they run in order. Name and ID is the first one. The second one is name. So if you delete the object over here, you delete it in the new file, and then you put it back in with the same name, that'll count. It'll lock on with that. The third one, which is the one that I would see the most, would be the one where you change the name. Like in Starting Point, we call companies accounts frequently. And sometimes that messes with people. So what if you want to change it in the new version? Well, if you change the name, the underlying ID under the hood doesn't change. So FileMaker can still get the lock on, right? Does that make sense? So hopefully this is making sense. But so you have three types of locks. If it can't lock on with one of those three, it doesn't bring the data over. So the key fields, the ID fields, it gets a lock because the name or name and ID, and then it just blows the data over and it resets the serial. This is literally, for those of you expecting complexity in the FileMaker world, this is magic. Magic. This is magic. It's awesome. It's awesome. In fact, can I just clap for a while? The engineers at FileMaker put this together for us. And FileMaker, this is a direction of where they're going, not so much the command line part, but the fact that it's so easy to move data and migrate data and update solutions. This stuff's a big deal. This is really a big deal. 30 years we've been waiting, now it's here. So thank you, right? Awesome. So questions from the people about this, Miles?
Yeah, I think the biggest question we've been getting since you started showing the migration stuff is people who got FM Starting Point 5 and they've made a bunch of changes, whether that's scripts, layouts, and they want to know if they can migrate those changes to Starting Point 6.
It doesn't. Okay, so this is super important. The migration tool is a data tool. So the answer is FileMaker is aware of this request. They would like to address this request. They have made public webinars where they talk about the direction they're going. Clearly, that's kind of this idea of what the next step. This tool is a data mover tool. The data comes out of the source file. It goes into the destination file or the clone file, and it takes the schema there. So it takes the data on one side and the schema from the new file. So if you have schema changes on both sides, it doesn't somehow magically mirror that. The idea is not so much Starting Point related. I mean, if you took Starting Point and you never made any edits to it, then that would be where you could use this. Or if you're building a solution in the company and then you're working on an offline copy at home or in the woods or desert, the beach, you're working offline, then you want to bring it in and roll it over. This is the way you would do that. So yeah, so that's the issue. Just to give you an idea, people say, oh, I want to use the latest version of Starting Point. Listen, I have some internal tools where we manage things. I'm using copies of Starting Point that are 3.0, right, still, because we've made all these customizations to them. They're fine. But so once again, this is the data file here, and this is the clone file, right? And so the clone has the schema. The source file, the one that everyone was using, the live file, is where the data comes from. And what comes out of it out the other end is this tool, this one, or not that one, where'd it go? Migrated right here. So it created the file again. And by the way, it's what's interesting about this. There it goes. What's interesting about this is that this file here is 714, and typically when it moves all the data, there's a little bit of cleanup that goes on. And if there's empty space in there, it tends to remove the empty space. Kind of like a compressed copy, if you understand what I'm talking about, a compressed copy. So it becomes a little bit smaller. This one's actually 481. That's really small. It must have compressed a lot of data in there to get that one. Interesting. Yeah, well, that's typically what happens. You use FileMaker and you start using it a lot, and the users are accessing and adding data. It tends to bloat a little bit because of space that gets threaded into the file. It gets built into the file. So if you run a compressed copy or run this process, it tends to shrink things down a little bit, right? So anyway. So that's awesome stuff. So the data migration tool is the thing. So any other questions on that end of things?
We had a quick question about the data migration tool that I thought might be an interesting point to talk about. Does it do a report on fields that it wasn't able to transfer?
Yeah, so what happens is that, well, I got rid of it now. Well, let me see, is it here? Yeah, it's gone. So you remember all that telemetry that was coming down? There's a mode in it where you can get a verbose log out of it. And basically the idea is that it gives you a breakdown of everything so it has really 3 output levels. So if you do the command line tool, you see the readout here. It's got a quiet mode where it gives you no feedback. It just says done. Literally, you tell it to go, and then the processors get busy, and then it's done. It's got a normal or standard mode where it gives you some telemetry of what's happening. And then the verbose, it's like, well, it's like me on too much caffeine. I'm just chatting away. It just chats. So it gives you, that's what you saw, the litany of stuff. So you'd have to dig through there and look for where it didn't do a lock on for some reason. Although, yeah, I mean, I guess you could go through and triage that. I guess you could pull it and again come up and do a search for issues that were not brought over. But once again, if you build a new field, you should kind of know what those are anyway. Because like there's no real fixing this tool, right? It's not like you can go in there and like, oh, this didn't work right, let's fix it. Man, this is like a black box. It's like you put the sausage in one side, and out comes hamburger or something on the other side, right? I mean, you get the idea. It's a black box. Data goes in one side, goes out the other. There's no monkeying with the file. Now, in the future, once again, FileMaker is leaning into this. Obviously there would be ideas for us to be able to customize this or somehow adjust it or make it more precision oriented. I mean, it's pretty precise now, but the rules that I gave you are kind of absolute and non-negotiable. So the only thing you can do is adjust whether the security accounts come over from one side to the other side, for example, and the value list. If you value list and the accounts are considered data, right? So if you add 5 new people, that's considered data that comes over normally. And then value list, custom value list, where you're putting, people go into edit box, they customize the value list. Those come over too. You can have a turn a switch where it won't bring the accounts over and it won't bring over the value list. It uses those from the clone side. But that's like 2 or 3 minor little issue, customization points. Largely, it just runs. And for a vast majority of people, it's great. If you have schema on changes on both sides, like new things here, a new layout here, new layout here, it's not gonna fix that. That's not what it does. That will realistically, I see that coming in the future. I just don't know how and when or even what it will look like. In fact, here's part of it. Here's the interesting thing. FileMaker has done a couple of things with this release, and we're at 1 hour. I figure we might go 90 minutes or so for those of you who have a hard stop. But this data migration tool is a command line. So a third-party company, Productive Computing, built the wrapper, what I call wrapper app. That's the other terminology, wrapper app. It wraps around the command line to make the interface great, right? And so we have fresh clone and wrapper app. Those are your vocabulary words for the day. So FileMaker has changed. the admin console on FileMaker Server. And the FileMaker Server admin console largely looks like the cloud one, so it's really pretty, right? In fact, if you watch the training, you go out there, you see this. It's very, very beautiful. I've got one here, it's running, but I'm on a backup network connection because the network in this couple block area of my office here just decided to die. So we're on the backup network, so I can't get to it from here. But the FileMaker Server largely conceptually is the same. The cloud's largely conceptually the same. The interface on the FileMaker Server, the Mac Windows one, is improved. It's better. They also have access to, they've also provided this new tool called the Admin API. And what it allows third parties to do is write their own FileMaker Server control software. And so I'm going to show this to you real quick. I'm not going to connect with it because the internet, yeah, it's still out over there. This machine, it's out, and these machines here, it's on. It's called the missing admin tool from Klaus Levent. Data Manix folks over there in Europe. He built this tool, and it's fantastic because what it does is it's a free tool. It's another free tool. And what it does is it allows you to have an alternate way of controlling or running a server. So what it does is you put the information in here and you log in. It'll actually give you the files, and you can open the files, close the files, do all sorts of stuff. It gives you some command line helper things. So if you want to control the FileMaker Server through the command line, you can do that. There are some things there that, like SSL certificates, things like that, where you need the command line. And then you can also go through and talk to the web admin console. This is the basic console that everyone uses, but the rest consoles here. So basically with FileMaker Server now, there's three ways to talk to it. The web browser, which we've always had, the command line, which we've always had, and now there's this admin API tool. Very cool stuff. And so this tool actually brings all three of those together in one spot, which is why I like it. And so at the top, this is the admin, this is that new admin API part of it, and you can see all the things I can change here. I can, so yeah, so that's what that's what this does. So it allows you to enable and disable the PHP custom web publishing, which is in the product. Now, strategically, FileMaker has implemented a new way of getting data out of it. So remember we were talking about consuming data API or data with the data API in 16. Finally in 17, they've shipped out the version of what they call the FileMaker data API. So this data, the API word comes in here a lot. It's easy to get confused, but this is where FileMaker becomes a source to push the data out, as opposed to really a consumption tool where it brings it in. I mean, largely the consumption tool is what we had in 16. We could push the data out in previous versions using XML or PHP. With this new one, right, it allows you to command it through what basically kind of this REST API and send the data out through FileMaker Server. They are charging a little bit if you use it a ton, like if you set up for a giant company and you use it like tons of gigs of data, then FileMaker may hit you up for another $100 or $200. But for a vast majority of people, you're never going to have a problem with the amount of data you push out of it. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it's pretty generous. It allows you to be a data source, and only if you have a giant website where you got 20,000 people banging on the server, you're probably going to need to buy a little extra capacity. But that is the data API. So questions about where they're going. So the data API, by the way, is also in the cloud. So you can publish web pages from the FileMaker cloud now, right? So using this data API. So the PHP and the XML is a little bit older technology. That's in FileMaker Server. FileMaker is never going to push that to the cloud. If you want to publish data out of FileMaker, it doesn't have to go through a web page and go through a lot of things, but the idea is that your customers want to see a public facing page about their order status, for example. You can do that through the FileMaker data API. It pushes out, so you can do that on server or cloud. Yeah, so that's how that works largely. Steve, you're there now, right? Yes, you surfaced. Yeah, Steve is in a different office location. So so you built the data API. So do you have any general comments on the data API for FileMaker Server in terms of what people need to know about it?
There is a bit of a learning curve to it. You will need to probably spend half a day or a day if you're familiar with half a day if you're familiar with APIs already, particularly REST APIs. If you're not, you'll need to become familiar with them because it follows the principles of modern coding in REST APIs. So there's nothing specifically fancy about it other than that. but there is a bit of a learning curve to it. Once you get into it, though, it's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
I took about a half a day, learned the thing, and put up a demo where I could even upload images pretty easily. Now, there is a setting, if you're using it on the web, you have to write a middleman, and that's kind of annoying. But other than that, it's
So for those of you wondering
awesome
about this part of the conversation, when you start talking data APIs and stuff like that, in terms of FileMaker being a source, not a consuming part of it, but the source out, that's really the senior ninja part that we had in our diagram. So I don't want to spend too much time wasting time spinning around in that area. Operating system requirements for using FileMaker 17, the client side. You have to have the current OS on the Mac or one version back. There are some Macs that are like 9, 10, 12 years old that still work just fine, but they won't run these operating systems, so they're kind of end of life. On Windows, you can still use Windows 7, which is amazing because Windows 7 is like ancient. Make sure you have all the updates run. Windows 8, Windows 10. A lot of people love Windows 10, so recommend that. Operating system for FileMaker Go. Oh, we haven't done the Go demo. We need to definitely do that before we get too far along. And what that is 11 dot whatever. So just run your updates. Make sure you're on iOS 11, and then run the update. And this slide's already out of date. I think they're up to, are they 11.3 now? I think they were 11.3. All right, so 11.25. I don't know. There's some. The problem is I lose track of it because Apple updates this stuff all the time. So the operating systems for server, once again, 10.12, 10.13 on the Mac, and then Windows Server 10.12 with the update that you see here. All this information is available on FileMaker's website. Go to the product and then hit technical tech specs, and it'll bring you this information. Browser requirements for WebDirect, right? We're not showing WebDirect today. Once again, to cover everything in the FileMaker product line and to learn it is many hours. That's why the video course is almost 60 hours. But WebDirect is available if you use a fairly modern browser. Once again, notice Chrome 65 on Android. So if you're an Android person, it's the Chrome 65 Android 7X one right here. End of life reminder from FileMaker, September 21, they will no longer talk to you about FileMaker 14. Largely, to be honest with you, not too many people are going to have sympathy if you haven't updated anyway, but there are a lot of people who've been using 14. So I suggest you think about upgrading. If you're going to install FileMaker 17, just make sure before you kind of commit to it in your entire organization or with your group that they can actually run it. Because if you have someone using an old computer that's not updated, it runs fine, does everything else. But if they can't install it, it'll be a hard thing, kind of disappointing when you say install it. It says, sorry, this machine can't run it. Please update your operating system. If you're looking for where to find the engine, right, the command line process, which you have to have, you're going to go to your software benefits on the FileMaker community forum, and you can download it there. It's right down here at the bottom, FileMaker Data Migration Tool. Then once you have that command line tool, then you go to the productive site and you grab their wrapper app, and you put the two together, and then it does all the command line stuff. Very, very cool stuff. And then Colossal Event, the free admin tool. So this is what it looks like for those of you who are interested in seeing this. This is what it looks like when it connects. It gives you all the files here. And it actually gives you interface into all three areas, into the command line helper. It's very cool. Very cool tool, and it's open, it's unlocked. So if you want to learn how to talk to FileMaker server and to control your own server and build your own tool if you want, you can download it and learn how to do it. For me, it's a little bit on the deep end, and most people don't need to know that. So most of my training for most people, it gets them from the beginning level to this becoming like a senior, kind of the baby senior level, that ninja on the right side. My goal is to get you into that area, and then from there, you're going to go into whatever technical areas you want to learn about. But my goal with the training is to get you to that point. Evil twins, right? In fact, we have to put the little horns and stuff on these guys. So anyway, there's a data migration tool right here. Data migration assistant, wrapper app in quotes, right? And so these guys, when you see them, the faces look different here, but trust me, when you see them coming at you at DevCon or something, and they're about the same size, right? They look like twins coming at you. In fact, I have to kind of process to figure out which one I'm talking to, right? So anyway, watch out for those guys. Oh, okay. So I didn't show this, but I figured I'd warn you about this. So this tool here is the free tool. So everyone likes the smell of free software in the morning, right? I always share that. This one here is another wrapper app. It's being made by 360 Works. They haven't really talked about it too much. We have videos on it in the course now. You can go check it out. This version of the wrapper app, so the way the data migration tool worked, you saw it with the command line or with the 360 tool. You download you shut the file down off the server, you bring it down. This is the one that users are using. Then you get your clone, and then you run the commands or you do drag and drop and it does it. And then you have the file there on your computer and you put it back on the server. This tool here, you set it up, it downloads it off the server, it downloads the clone off the server, it does the stuff automatically, and then it posts it back up to multiple servers. So it's like, it's all the extra hand holding and so if you had to update like a bunch of customers and you had this stuff set up, you could actually push out a new version. Very cool. And so the interface here is ugly as hell, okay? But this is their alpha tool and it was working in the video, it works. It downloads the file, it does the migration, it posts it back up. Super cool. I didn't show it to you today because they want to show it off when it's more pretty. Obviously this is kind of ugly, but once again, the productive guys give us a great interface and the price is right. For most people, this will be great. If you're doing a vertical market solution and you're trying to load new versions for your customers, this is the best news you've probably ever heard from FileMaker. I really mean that. This data migration tool is the biggest thing, period. It really is. So questions and answers, and then, so this is a demo of the local notifications. Basically, it's a way of triggering a notification yourself. So I have my handy dandy iPad right here, right? And so it's connected to this file here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into the QuickTime Player app and I'm going to tell it to do a new movie recording. We're not actually gonna record anything, but I want you to see my iPad. So now you can see it. Good, all right, so there is the iPad, right? So it's logged onto this file over here. So here's the basic deal with this. If I push the button right here, I'm gonna push the button right there in the middle, and then I'm gonna go ahead and exit out. It has scheduled a delay of only 10 seconds for the demo purpose. It's a timer that basically goes off on the Mac, or on the iPad, I should say, and I can swipe down with my, if it'll let me swipe down, options. I can read the message, whatever it's giving me, and I can say, delay another 10 seconds or run script number 1. So basically, there are 3 buttons here. The third button I have turned off. Both of these, it basically runs one script basically, and it sends a giant script parameter so you know what you selected. So if I say, wait another 10 seconds, it went back to the FileMaker app, right? And then ran the same command to do another 10-second delay. So when it runs again, you'll see the counter iterate. So now it says 16 up there where it didn't say that before. And I can say run test 1. And so it brings FileMaker up and it's run the script. And what it does is it runs a standard script, and then this is the data that comes back from that process, right? So if I come over here, I go to script workspace. It's all kind of small, but there's this thing called configure local notification. And I want to see this one right here. It's got a lot of buttons and options on it. So we, in our Go 17 training, we're gonna make sure we cover this in great detail. Basically, you can configure the buttons, what they say, what the message is, and basically the delay. It's a number of minutes, seconds in the future. So you don't set it for like 3:30 p.m. If you want to do that, you're gonna have to figure out the time, 3:30 p.m. minus your current time to get the seconds, and then you send that number of seconds to the notification. So what you do is you set right here the delay. So the delay was, can't really see this, it's 10 seconds so up there. So pretty cool stuff. So you can customize, change it to whatever. Change the text. We could change it to, let me see, button label. We could change this one to, you could say respond to new order, right? Or something like that, or check something, or whatever you want to do. The idea that FileMaker has set this up is that they set this up. I mean, we're setting up with a delay, but what you could do is you could have a situation where you have the iBeacons, which are little transponders, right? iBeacons are like the idea kind of Blade Runner ideas, where as you walk through a store, it knows you're there, and then it starts putting ads out for you. You start to see this. Some high-end places, they try to do this, but the idea is that you can sense where you're at. Pokemon Go is geofencing. People said, what's geofencing? Well, remember running around with the Pokemon Go and you're trying to capture the Pokemon and they're kind of like visually on the screen, right? Well, those are little geofences that are set up all around the world, and it's just a mathematical formula that they put in the computer. But as you get close to one, it trips it. So FileMaker now can detect obviously the iBeacons or the geofencing, and it can pop to the front. So questions. I want to do some Q&A, open Q&A before we wrap it up. We're heading to the end here.
One that would be a nice little segue here. Does RCC have any type of live chat or some way to help me understand some of the training videos I've been watching?
Yeah, so if the training videos are the most inexpensive way to get into learning about FileMaker. If you want to get all the training videos and a copy of Pro Advanced and everything else that we have all in one bundle, if you actually need personalized help, you can get what we call half-off coaching, and you get assigned a one-on-one person who'll do a screen share with you, like an hour or two at a time, and you pay for that service, and it's pretty heavily discounted. But the coaching is really a one-on-one. They're there to help train you, and along the way, if they build something and you're learning, and you're building with them, you're building something, one, two, you're learning, which is really sweet. And so people get stuck watching the videos where they get hung up. Some one-on-one coaching where the coach can help them get them over the hump is pretty useful. The people who have our coaching, I would say probably, I would say 95% of the people who do the coaching love it. It's like they love it a lot. And it's fairly inexpensive relative to full development. So it's useful. Next question.
Next question, is FileMaker Go or WebDirect the best option for mobile users? I'm worried about the number of ports required to be open.
Well, okay, so FileMaker Go communicates over port 5. Okay, this is a very technical question, but it's to put it in normal human terms for the person who asked the question knows what I'm going to say. But FileMaker actually, the Pro and Go communicate kind of like on a frequency on the radio, 5003. Technically, in the internet world, it's called a port number, and it's through the wire. And like normal web traffic is port 80, and if you have SSL traffic, it's port 443. So you can think of it, if you've never heard of this, that's why I try to spend a lot of time training and bringing things down to more simple terms. It's kind of like a frequency. If you're not listening for 5003, you're never going to hear it. At the same time, if you have an office that's secure, they block all that stuff. They have to allow the traffic through the firewall for certain port numbers. Most of the time, they allow port 80 through. But if they want to do FileMaker Go or Pro, it's port 5003. WebDirect uses port 80 or 443 for SSL, because remember, WebDirect is browser, right? So you can use browser. Listen, you have an iPhone or iPad, my legit recommendation is to use Go. You can run WebDirect on here, but use Go. It's faster, in my opinion. It gives you access to signature capture. It gives you access to really good controls of the camera and stuff, all sorts of sensor data. Remember all the sensor and the timers and stuff? The signature capture, the sensor data, the timer, none of that exists in WebDirect. WebDirect does not know what kind of device it's on. It assumes it's on some sort of machine with a browser, right? So that's the rub with WebDirect. Go knows it's on an iPhone or iPad, and it can dig in and know exactly the capabilities of what it's on. So it can get all sorts of extra capabilities out of it, including signature capture. Signature capture has been in it for a while, but so if you have all these like specialized things you want to do, you need to use Go. In fact, we've had customers who really wanted all these capabilities. They really love FileMaker, but their IT guys thought they would cheap out and buy Android devices for everyone, and then they end up throwing them all away or selling them off and buying all iPhones. Seriously, and they still saved $30,000 a month. No kidding. They by going to Go and having field service guys going around doing service on iPads. That company literally saved. We have a video on this somewhere, but I stack up the money. $30,000 a month or over 3 years, almost $1 million, about $1 million, big pile of money, right? So if you have your own FileMaker server on your own office, you have to think about opening that port number for traffic to come in. If it's on FileMaker Cloud up there, then it runs on Amazon's data center, right? And Amazon handles that for you, right? All you have to do is allow traffic from your clients out to that. So it's a little more technical, but that's what the video courses are for. Question? Questions?
Yeah, we got two more. One's Go related. Where was it? Does FileMaker Go have to be open to use the notification function?
No, that's the new thing in 17. In 16, it did. In fact, 16, the notifications were almost worthless. 17, it could be in the background. That was the whole point. That's why I kept exiting to the background. So it can be completely in the background, and then you can ignore it, or you can click it, and then it fires a script and goes into it. Pretty cool. Really cool. The only one better would be is if you could have the server talk to Go and push a notification to it, like something happens on the server, like a condition changes. But right now, to set, here's the criteria. To set a notification, a script has to run locally on Go. So however you can fire a script to run locally on Go, that's how you do it. You have to do that. That local script on Go is what schedules the notification. And then it could be in the background once you do that. In fact, you can schedule all sorts of schedules, a bunch of them, and you give each schedule a name. I don't know what the limit is, but more than what most people would ever need, I'm sure. Next question.
This one might kind of tie into the coaching program you mentioned, but someone was asking about FM starting point. You were showing the calendar, a lot of good feedback on it. They're asking if it could also be linked to like Office 365 or iCal.
FileMaker, starting with 16, has this REST API capability. So FileMaker can talk to PayPal, talk to Slack, talk to Amazon, talk to Office 365. If you wanted to go down that road, I would probably just buy a plugin for Evil Twins, productive computing. I have a couple of vendors that I recommend. 360works is one. They're in Atlanta, Georgia. They make Super Container and some MirrorSync, things like that. The Evil Twins, productive computing, make a whole bunch of other products, largely non-competitive. QuickBooks, connecting to Office, I think, connecting to email clients, things like that. I couldn't tell you all their products. We use some of them, but I would check out productivecomputing.com. They're plugins for that. Those will use Go or Pro to talk to it. If you're using Go, then you'd have to install the plugin on server. So then Go would talk to the FileMaker server where the plugin is, and you could do work there. It just depends, but most people want to connect Office 365 or doing it on Mac or Windows, right? So at least, I mean, I don't try to, listen, this gets back into like if you're 20 or if you're 30 or 40, I don't see this as my main, I don't see this as my main computer, right? This is what I take out on the road when I don't want to schlep my full computer, right? And so a laptop is great, that's Mac, Windows Pro, but an iPad, you know, if you're like my daughter, okay, so my 16-year-old daughter edits video on an iPhone. And she finally kept crashing it because she kept trying to edit video too much. I mean, it's a function of the age and the generations, what people think their phones are for. And I'm not saying that I'm right or they're wrong or anything like that, but there are limited capabilities on these devices that are this small. They won't do the same capability of a full computer. So that all kind of comes into the conversation here in a little bit, right? I mean, these are largely consumption devices. I watched my daughter try to do content creation with videos, editing videos on an iPhone. And as long as the videos are small and simple and cute and Instagram-y kind of thing, then it's fine. But making a 15-minute video with flying animations and all this sort of stuff, you need a desktop computer for that. Same with FileMaker. If you want to build an application in FileMaker, you got to use Pro Advanced on Mac or Windows, right? And once again, I said Pro Advanced because that's the current product. But technically, a product called Pro in 17 doesn't exist anymore. It's only Pro Advanced.
Yeah.
All right. So any other final questions?
Mark just wanted to emphasize that they do have server plugins that can talk directly to Office 365 and have that originate from Go using a perform script on server. So if you look up Outlook Manipulator or Exchange Manipulator, you can find those from Productive. And then the last thing someone mentioned, I didn't know if you wanted to show, was the add-on tables. I think we skipped over that.
You know, there are a lot of little small feature improvements in the 17 platform. We've covered the big ones, the strategically important ones. Add-on tables are interesting. So FileMaker is experimenting once again with the ability to move schema, copy and paste schema from point A to point B. Imagine being able to copy and paste like the things you've changed in a starting point, old one, and paste it into the new starting point. Not with the data migration tool, that's data. Notice it's FileMaker data migration tool, not FileMaker schema migration tool. In the future, The idea is to move schema. Well, FileMaker's been playing with this a little bit. I'm gonna show this to you real quick, just on this screen right here. And so what it does is you can go into a portal here, and this is where FileMaker's been, that's not portal, that's portal. But FileMaker's been going in and trying to experiment with some under the hood technology. And I get into this in the video course, we don't really have time, but in here you can select current table, and that is what, again, that's the master detail one. Or you can do an add-on table. And if you had any relationships, they'd be here in the middle. So you say add-on table, and then this is a list of add-on tables you can add. So let's just say we're going to add action items. I say choose. So these are all different ones. You can see a little over here. So what do we want to call it? Well, if I don't want to call it action, we could call it, training events or something. I could come up with whatever name I want. Okay. And what FileMaker does is it really, I'm going to grab my group, move that over here, grab that. Of course, the button's not grouped to that. And I can drag this over here like that. Get that out of the way. So this is, if I go back to browse mode, this is now functionality that's just built in. That's really cool. So FileMaker was able to drop the schema out of the sky onto the layout. It actually works. This is real. So you're like, well, what do you mean it's real? Okay, so let's go into field the schema under the hood, field database, managed database. It added the table here, one. Then it went in and added, connected it through a primary key, because it was smart, and wired it all up for you. Now, how far can this really go? I don't know. How far can you get the AI to think for you, right? And it's not like Star Trek where they say, compile a database and do this sort of stuff, and the computer comes back and says, 4 hours, right? But obviously adding small little widgets like this, right? I call it a widget, but it's an add-on table. But frankly, to be clear, this is kind of an experiment by FileMaker. I mean, clearly they've added the product, but this object that was added on here is actually code. It's not like a little FileMaker file we copy and paste. If we were going to do this ourselves, we'd have a little separate FileMaker file and we copy and paste it like at a starting point. This is actually a block of code, XML code. So FileMaker is experimenting with the idea of taking a FileMaker solution and grinding up all the way down to like just the code, like a text file. It's like a text file. And so to add this into the solution, they took a text file effectively and sucked it into the FileMaker solution, and it built the table, connected the table occurrence, built the relationship, dropped the portal on screen, dropped the fields on screen, and all that was in this block of code. So they're experimenting with this, right? So you go, well, what do you mean by experimenting with it? Well, for example, if I go back in here and I go back to the portal and I add another one and I say add on table, there's no addition of extra items here. There's no way of adding items. There's no way of really extending this technology. They built this and it's really kind of locked in concrete, and we don't really, in an easy way, have access to change this, okay? Obviously, they want your feedback on this. I think it's fantastic, but it doesn't implement the idea far enough for me to be, that's why I didn't cover it, because unless you have one of these generic things you want, it's not really super useful, right? But if you could expand on this and add more stuff to it and then share that with other people, right? Share it with other people. So that's where FileMaker is going, in that general direction. They've talked about this. This is an implementation of this. Technically, if you're a technical person and you're still here, we still have almost everyone here. If you go into the FileMaker Pro application, I said Pro, I didn't say Pro Advanced, but you know what I meant. Well, I'll just show you this. Okay, let me just do this. Okay, this is not approved. What you're going to see here, so FileMaker Marketing Sales will tell you all about this, but the strategic importance of this is right here. So I'm going to open up my hard drive. This explodes and dies. We'll know what happened. I'm going to go to FileMaker. The same on Windows. On a Mac, you right-click it and you say Show Package Contents. Really, the FileMaker app is a package of sub-files, right? And you go Show Package Contents. And here's the contents. So the in-user license agreement you sign for FileMaker says you won't go in here and hack up their stuff. But I think it's in resources in here. And you go down here, and these are all like little images and things like that. Default, okay, all the icons that are built into FileMaker, they're all in there, right? Dynamic templates, here you go. Add on. So what we did action items, okay? So I open up action items. These are localized in different languages, by the way, so it's not just US English, it goes everywhere. If I go to Ian, and then I open that with, I'll just open with text edit. Okay, This is what FileMaker had. This is they've never, ever had this before, okay? Not like this. This code was sucked in over here, and it generated the table, the relationship, the connection, the fields, and all the behaviors here. It did it with code. So as you can see from this code example in the add-on modules part of FM Starting Point, the add-on table, that FileMaker is leaning into this idea of describing everything in code. And of course, once it's in code, then you can copy and paste it back and forth. So really cool thing. So that kind of wraps up our webinar. For those of you who watched the live webinar, I was magically cut off due to unknown reasons. We have suspicions, but someone thought it was an alien abduction or something, but no, I'm still here, unfortunately, for most of you. So anyway, yeah, so the webinar is great. Glad you attended. Awesome stuff. If you want information about the Data Migration Assistant, the wrapper app from Productive Computing, I'm going to put that on screen right here. And of course, the Evil Twins are happy to answer your questions about that or sell you one of their other products that allow you to connect to FileMaker to like Office 360, things like that. The data migration wrapper application is totally free. It's really great. Also, we talked about the missing admin for FileMaker Server 17. That's from Klaus Levent. That's another free tool. Really good stuff there as well. So it's Richard Carlton. Thanks for attending the webinar. I appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.